All right, everyone, we're live. Thanks for joining us today. This is going to be a great live stream. I know many people have been looking forward to this one, especially as seemingly quite recently in the animal rights movement, we've had like a small spate of people, renouncing their ethics and joining the dark side, as it were. If you notice the thumbnail to this stream itself, it's got sort of the dark side and the light side, the good side on the right. And we have a very special guest on today who has lived on both sides of the spectrum. So just before anyone jumps down her throat, Lucie is not an ex-vegan, okay? She's a great animal rights activist. You can check her content out on YouTube. Channel name is tagged. And she's holding non-vegans accountable on the street, including ex-vegans. So Lucie is not an ex-vegan. She is an ex-vegan. So Lucie is someone who we're hoping can shed some light today on what is going on in these people's heads, because there have been some disappointing ones recently, and it's always perplexed me as someone who's never been an ex-vegan, like most of you in the comments. We find it very, very hard to find out what's going on in these people's heads when they suddenly do a complete 180 on their ethics. So we're hoping Lucie can shed some light on her experiences today, having been through that. And I hope you don't mind me saying, Lucie, just before we start, but Lucie said she's a little bit embarrassed today to do.
I mean, I'm very embarrassed that I did it. I'm a little embarrassed that I'm talking about it. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. But that's a good thing. It shows that you're not going to renounce it again. You're embarrassed that this happens because now you know, holy shit, what the hell was I thinking, basically. And your heart is completely in the right place now, and we really appreciate you coming on. So, Lucie, thank you for coming on. And did you want to introduce yourself and just tell us about what kind of activism you do and all that kind of stuff?
I mainly do outreach, like I do outreach on my own and also do it with Wither Free. I organize events. I do a radio/podcast, like a vegan one. I'm just dipping my toes into legislation in a group, like just helping out a little bit. And yeah, pretty much I think that's it.
Cool. And if anyone is wondering about the accent, you're French, but
Yes.
you're married to an American man, is it?
Yes.
Okay, cool. And so you're doing your activism in the United States, right?
Yes.
Cool, good stuff. So I guess let's get straight into it, because I don't actually know much. In fact, I don't know what your story is. This is just going to be straight, we're just going to be talking about this from afresh. All I know about you is I did a poll on my Instagram a few weeks back saying, are you an ex-vegan? That is someone who was an ex-vegan and then renounced that and is now vegan again. And you were one of like 3 people who said yes. So that's the funny thing. Usually when people go ex-vegan, their minds seem to have been made up. They're just beyond all kind of reproach, and it's just impossible to get them. They've joined the dark side. You can't get them back to the light side, seemingly. But you were one of the few people who you managed to re-see the light again. So tell us what your story is about when you first went vegan, then became ex-vegan. Why on earth did you 180 on those views, and kind of what brought you back? Tell us your story.
Right. Well, first I want to say, like, it goes without saying that all the excuses I'm gonna present are excuses, obviously, and I'm not saying when I explain them, it's just to explain the mindset and how it got me there, but it doesn't mean, obviously, that any of them were valid. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But that's just a disclaimer that I think is obvious. Anyways. All right, so I basically became vegetarian first at 13. So I kind of I was at a food truck, and there was this machine that was electrifying mosquitoes, and that kind of shocked me because it was just because we were outside and we decided to be outside, and if we had been inside, it wouldn't have happened to them, and it was just for convenience. And I looked around and no one cared, and I was like, what the hell, And then I realized that the burger that my dad was getting was a pig, like from a pig. And so on my way home, I was thinking about it. I knew that you could be vegetarian and healthy. So I was thinking about that, and I was like, why, if we don't need to kill animals, at that point I was just thinking about vegetarianism, why would we do it? And then, I sat down at the table and I said, okay, I'm gonna be vegetarian now. And then for several months after that, I was researching. So I watched a little bit of Earthlings for like 10 minutes, and then I was like, whoa, okay. And then I stumbled on a lot of things, but especially Gary Ruski's speech.
Mm-hmm.
So I watched it like 3 times before I was like, I don't care if you don't let me, parents, because my parents were like, you can't go vegan, you can't be healthy and be vegan. That's what they thought. And
Right.
and so I after like 3 times was like, yeah, no, I'm doing it anyways. So I became vegan. I'm using that term, but I know that there's like thoughts about the use of the term. I guess we can get into that later.
Yeah, for the sake of clarity, though, just continue using those
Yes.
terms: vegan, ex-vegan, blah blah blah. That's fine.
And so I was like that for like several years, and then I just went back into vegetarian a few times, and even one time I ate gelatin and I knew it, so not really vegetarian. And yeah, I went between the vegan lifestyle and vegetarian a few times until I was 20, and from 20 on until now I've been vegan, and that's 6 years. So yeah, that's the whole thing.
Now, why on earth? So you were basically the sort of ex-vegan we all hate, right? You're the one. You watched Earthlings, for goodness sake. You watched Gary's speech. You saw the torture and the hell that these animals were being put through, and then you went, you know what? I'm not going to be vegan anymore. Now, why was that? What was going on in your head? What were your reasons, excuses, however? What was going on there?
I think there were many things going on. I think one of them was like buying into the humane myth thing.
Mm-hmm.
There's a way for especially like eggs, because there was a small farm down the road, and
Right.
and I didn't know. I wasn't as educated as I should have been, and I didn't know. I mean, just in terms of welfareism, like even if it was just my problem, I didn't even know that it wasn't like they weren't spared suffering. You know what I mean? And I think, and I had this idea in the back of my head, like I didn't like when people were saying, for example, "Oh, I kill my animals humanely," but I thought I was being unreasonable.
Mm-hmm.
When I didn't like it. I was like, but that's you just being extreme. I really believed that what they were saying about veganism, the vegan lifestyle, whatever. And yeah, I think that was one of the things. And then a big part of it was really like, I knew no vegetarians around me and no vegans at all. Like I didn't even know anyone online. So I was like, I guess 14 at that point, and there was a lot of peer pressure about this. Like, I think from like the moment before when I was vegetarian, there was already peer pressure, but after I became vegan, sorry, it just like the fights. When you're an angry vegan who's just discovered the atrocities that are going on.
Oh yeah.
You are very angry, and imagine a teen with all the hormones as well. Just it's great. And so, yeah, it was a nightmare, like, with my family, my friends, just like from one day to the next, it was a nightmare socially, because I didn't know how to deal with it, and they were really apathetic, all of them. And so that wasn't really the thing, I think, that made me not, I think it contributed to that, like the peer pressure. But like the big thing was that I really I sank into a deep depression about all this stuff, because I kept talking to people. I was trying to do some activism, some leafletting, things like that, going to some protests, and it felt like every time I spoke to my family, for example, like my sister told me, I agree with everything you said, but I'm not gonna do it. I don't care. And it's like, and I wasn't very good at outreach, but I was really trying to change the people around me, and I saw no change. So to me, like, it felt like the amount of futility was extreme. And so
Right.
I kind of, I went in a very bad depression, and I had panic attacks, like things like that, because of all the footage and the horrors,
Right.
And so at some point, after 2 years of that, I was like, yeah, I can't deal with this anymore. So I decided to pretend it wasn't happening.
Wow.
But
That is
still being
interesting.
vegan. Like not pretending it wasn't happening, but trying to, like, I knew it was happening. Of course, I wasn't so delusional, but it was
Yeah.
like a coping mechanism, because since I feel like there's nothing I can do really to change it, but
Yeah.
it's just it's a nightmare to be hyper aware of it. I was like, okay, I can't live like this. I'm gonna I can't do it. So I just, put it in the back of my head. And then the thing that happened was that once you're not focused on the victims anymore, you know, you just slip back into like, oh, but maybe they're right. Maybe I am crazy, maybe I am too extreme. I mean, everybody around me is fine emotionally.
Right.
And they're not the ones having like all these emotional problems, and they all agree that nothing bad is happening, everything's fine, and I'm
Right.
the young one here, I'm the youngest in my family, etc. So it was like yeah, I basically decided that I was crazy. Yeah, I was like, okay, well, I guess I agree, because I'm the one having all the problems apparently. So I think that was a huge part of it. And they kept dragging me from therapy, and it began, like, my depression began when I became aware of these atrocities, and they kept like bringing me from therapist to therapist, trying to find different, like, they diagnosed me like so many things, and then they would change their mind all the time, because it was literally just with that, like, the trauma of watching this, secondhand trauma or something from watching
Right.
this footage. And so I really, like, when you're always going to therapists and you don't know what the hell is going on with you, because it started with this, you really think that, yeah, maybe there is something wrong with me. And so I kind of bought into that, and I convinced myself, because also I guess it was more easy.
Yeah.
So that was a reason as well, I guess.
That is very interesting, and this is why it's great having you on, because I think this is a reason that ex-vegans kind of allude to, but they don't say outright. I think this, you do see some of this in like ex-vegan statements, but it just kind of creeps in there. The idea that, oh, it's just something everyone does, and, it's just something, it's normal to it. They're using which is stupid, right? Because they're using, these are some of the basic things we're taught to refute as vegans, right? That normal doesn't necessarily mean good. That every single oppression in history was supported by the masses. That's how it was an oppression. So, was it basically like you just felt because the status quo was so strong in terms of eating animals being, normal, and, why do we eat we eat animals? Well, because everyone else does it, and I must be the one in the wrong, because, I mean, once again, these are just basic fallacies, right? That we learn
Yeah.
to appeal to popularity stuff. But in your case,
I think that's a big one, though.
right, the weight of that just got so heavy on your shoulders that you just couldn't handle it anymore, and you just had to basically take the blue pill, so to speak, and live the comforting lie.
Well, that was one of the reasons, but I feel like the bigger part of that reason, like in that reason, was that I really did feel crazy, because I was so miserable. I couldn't function, like, it was insane. Like, I couldn't understand. It was to the point, like, where you question something that feels so, like, because to me, I was so sure about it, but then I began questioning everything because I was so miserable that at some point, like, you just try anything you can to kind of figure out what the problem is. And since they were telling me, well, that can't be the problem, right? Because it's not a problem for us.
Yeah.
Like, there's something about your brain or something, like, and so I really believed that it was, I didn't trust anything I thought 100% true. I didn't even believe any, like, I was so out of touch with reality. I didn't know what was real or not real at that point,
Right.
because I was so sure when I became vegan that this was so wrong. That,
Yeah.
and then I was like, yeah, well, I guess I don't know anything. Look at me, and yeah,
So it's almost
that
like
was a big part.
an identity crisis, almost.
Yeah, a reality, like I have no idea what's real and what's not, because my
Yeah.
emotions are completely off, apparently, like what feels like what seems obvious and what seems wrong and what makes sense doesn't actually make sense to anyone else.
Now here's the thing. I know what you mean here, but Because here's the thing, right? It's dystopia, right? We call it the anguish of being vegan in a non-vegan world. And when the first thing you do when you go vegan is you tell everyone else about what you've just seen and assume that they will go vegan because hey, everyone's a good person, you know. My family are lovely people. My friends are great. That's why I hang around with them. And there's good and evil in the world. And, you know, the good is all the people I'm surrounded with. And evil, that just happens in, you know, where the bombs are going off and stuff over here in the world. And there's civil wars and stuff. That's nothing to do with me and the people I'm surrounded with. And then you tell people, oh my god, you know, Jason, let me show you this. Did you know they do this to chicks in the egg industry? Yeah, you'll go vegan now, just like me, I'm sure, when I show you this clip. And, you know, hey, mum, dad, did you know this happens to mother pigs in the pork industry and blah, blah, blah. And then it just gets met with a complete, yeah, and circle of life or whatever. And suddenly your whole world gets flipped upside down. But here's the difference, and I think this is a significant thing we've picked up on from talking to you now in this live stream. I guess there's a difference between those people who know that they're right, as we do now, despite the masses being against them, right? It's like, well, I'm not the crazy one. I'm just the one who is able to think freely. And then there's people who assume that they must be wrong because everyone else thinks that, which is just the basic fallacy, the appeal to popularity that they're going towards. I've just got a super chat here from David Ramsey's God. Thank you for donating to my activism. David Ramsey's God says, David Rams said that when someone becomes an ex-vegan, there are two bridges a person must cross to enter into heaven, where animals will be waiting. Indeed, thank you very much. Serenity Poirier says, sounds like societal gaslighting. So, yeah, Lucie, would you say that was what happened to you? Was that... do you know what gaslighting is? Do you know what that... And would you say that... in fact, explain to anyone who doesn't know what gaslighting is. Can you just explain what gaslighting is?
I think gaslighting is when you basically tell someone that their perception is not real, like what they perceive, like what they see they don't see, what they hear they don't hear, what they feel they don't feel. I think that's what it means. Do you think, is that right?
Yeah, I guess it's kind of like others convincing you that you're crazy for like manipulative reasons or something.
I think that's definitely what, but it's kind of like, but okay, I think that's what happened, but it's also like, I'm not saying that this, like if I had kept the victims in my mind, that wouldn't have mattered. It's because I made the choice to switch it off. Kind of like a psychopath a little bit, but like kind of in survival mode in terms of like, I just couldn't handle the stress. Like I did not, I mean, maybe I could have, but I didn't want to, I didn't know how, whatever. And so I decided like, yeah, it's happening. I'm still vegan, like living a vegan lifestyle or whatever, but I'm putting it in the back of my head. And once you're not focused on the victims anymore, it's easy to just, all these like pressures or whatever become, like they go to the forefront instead of the victims, you know? Because I had been vegan for like 2 years or something.
Now,
you know?
Here's the important thing that we all want to know, that we're all wondering, because so far our attempts have been extremely fruitless. How the fuck did you go back to being vegan after you're an ex-vegan? How on earth, what convinced you to become vegan again? Because this is something we're really struggling with. I have not managed to successfully get an ex-vegan to become vegan again. And the only case that I've heard of it happen in the vegan movement was recently with Tim Sheaf. But who knows if we can even trust this guy. So Tim Sheaf has done a video a month back or so saying he apologises for renouncing veganism and that he's, you know, vegan again. Now, will he flake again? Who knows? I have no faith in him. But what on earth was it with you that has turned you from an ex-vegan into now a solid animal rights activist who now sees ex-vegans as total flakes?
I feel like, okay, so I really believe that if I had been exposed more to it, like even if I had seen somewhere the word vegan, I would have probably just go back to it. Like I was like that. I was kind of like not thinking about it. And when I would go, because I did it several times, the thing, like that's the problem as well. Like I would go back to like oh no, I can't do it at all. Like, what am I doing? And then like, but humanely, it was all about the suffering. It wasn't really about exploitation or use. I think that was a big part as well of the confusion. I wasn't clear about the use of animals. It was more about the suffering of animals, and so then I was like, ooh, but maybe humanely, whatever. So I remember the last time I went back to vegan, I was just like, I literally was just like, what the hell am I doing? I was looking at my plate, I was like, what am I doing? And then I just, I really had like, also it helps to understand me, my mindset a little bit, is that I had a lot of, I was really out of touch with reality. Like, I had a lot of issues with, what is real. Like, I had a lot of delusions. I went into spirituality a bunch, but like spirituality that wasn't really, because I guess there's some types of spirituality that are less out of touch with reality than others.
Yeah.
I went through the whole different kinds, like I was really trying to figure things out. But I wasn't a very rational person at that point. And so, but I was getting better that year. And so I was kind of just sit down. I was like, what the hell am I doing? Like, why am I, there's no reason. It was really not like, I wasn't like, I'm an ex-vegan because this didn't work for me. I was an ex-vegan because I didn't think about it. I was mindless about it. Like, I was kind of like, oh, it's more like, oh, but, it's a spectrum. I can just once in a while, like, and I know that the word vegan is not the right word to use because it's not that, but I was kind of like plant-based, and then I would have an egg or something. Like, it was like that.
Now, if you said earlier when you were telling us your story that you'd kind of convinced yourself that, oh, it's not all like this, and, you get the nice farms. How had you managed to convince yourself after watching something like Earthlings or Gary Yourofsky's speech?
I didn't watch it all, yeah.
Okay, but in any case, when we watch slaughterhouse footage and go vegan, we're adamant that there's no right way to do the wrong thing, and it doesn't matter if it's from the happy farm down the road, they still go to the same slaughterhouse and die in the same brutal way. How was it possible in that case that you managed to say to yourself, oh, well, it's not like this, and, actually there is the nice farm down the road that treats the animals kindly or something?
I wasn't educated enough. I think that was part of it. I mean, I did watch Gary's speech, but honestly, when you just watch like a few things like that and you don't like educate yourself as much, and then you make the conscious choice to not think about the victims anymore, like, there's so much contradicting information coming from your parents, from school, from your friends, from the TV, everywhere, in movies, everywhere. It's everywhere. So when we look at it from like a vegan point of view, we're kind of looking at like, well, you had it, right? Because that should be enough. It's true. It should be enough that you just had this glimpse of truth. Literally, it should be enough. But it sometimes it isn't. When you don't have a backbone, like you just. You kind of like, you don't necessarily have integrity or something, and it's easy to be influenced because there's so much around you.
It's interesting what you said there about not having a backbone. Do you think that is kind of the crux of this, that a lot of ex-vegans are just cowards and they just give into social pressures and they just don't want to stand up for their beliefs in the face of the status quo?
I think that's definitely a part of it, but I think the biggest reason to me is like just forgetting about the victims. Just not like it's when you just not focus, like when you put yourself in front of the, like in terms of a priority, it's not the victims anymore. Like, because if you remember the victims, everything is worth it.
Yeah.
But I think that's a big part of it. And then all the reasons that are kind of contributing to this ex-vegan thing are just added to that. But if you had the victims in mind, I mean, that's what happened with me, I think. I would have just continued being a vegan because it's like, yeah, it sucks, but whatever. It doesn't matter because of what they're going through and the fact that they're exploited and killed, whatever. So.
We've got a super chat here from Tailgate who says, yesterday while speaking with someone in public, a person told me that there are several different types of vegans. Lucie, what are your thoughts on this? I think just to clarify, thank you for the donation, by the way, Tailgate Activism. I think that must be referring to the whole vegan for environment, vegan for health, vegan for ethics, or something like that. That's my perception of what that might mean. But what are your thoughts on that personally?
Well, I mean, considering that, vegan means against exploitation of animals and use, not a lot of people know that necessarily. A lot of people, I think, are doing it like for suffering reasons, meaning like it's more like I sometimes it's okay, so they're not against the exploitation of all animal, like all against animal exploitation all the time necessarily, which is not veganism, but some people might be confused about that. And then there's people who are plant-based for the environment or like plant-based for health. But then I have an issue because I was talking with someone about this actually. I was wondering, like, how do you call someone who's plant-based, so meaning they're not against animal exploitation? They think that sometimes it's okay if they don't suffer or something, for example, but they don't choose to, for example, go to animals, like they reject everything like animal circuses and whatever, like animal testing, anything like that, because of the suffering aspect. Do you say they live a vegan lifestyle, or is that not? You know what I mean?
Oh, so you're saying that they are vegan, but not for exploitation reasons,
Yes.
just because of suffering. They're welfarists,
Yes.
basically.
Yeah.
I'd say they're welfarists, because what's stopping them from seeing it as okay to exploit animals one day, so long as, there's no suffering involved or something like that?
That's the thing. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. But they're not really vegan then, in terms of like the stance. But they live a vegan lifestyle. So would you say they live a vegan lifestyle, or is it not?
It's an interesting one, isn't it? I mean, yeah, maybe one of those things. It's like, for sake of clarity, we can say they live a vegan lifestyle because they don't support animal exploitation. But I would imagine, well, then again, are they living a vegan lifestyle? Because what is going to stop those people from, I don't know, wearing wool secondhand and leather secondhand and just wearing this kind of stuff, showing it off, or just mistakenly thinking that something is okay because in this one instance there's no suffering involved? Like, they might go to like a zoo or something where perhaps this zoo has done a better job than others of conservation or something like that. I mean, I guess there's no way they could live a vegan lifestyle technically if they didn't actually.
But many people say they're vegan, but they actually are like that. Like, like they care about the suffering, but they don't, like, I mean, some people, I don't know how many, but like, not all people who say they're vegan are against all animal exploitation and even understand that it's about that. So that's why I'm kind of confused about the words to use.
Well, and this is why I think the whole dropout rate stat that gets thrown about is complete bullshit. This stat that gets thrown about, and I've got this. This is a pinned post on my Instagram, by the way. If anyone is interested, it's called something like 84% quit ? So the stat that gets thrown around is that 84% of vegans quit veganism, and it's obviously nonsense because the way they sample these studies is very, very flawed. They don't have strict control measures. What they tend to do is they just ask people if they're vegan, and those people self-identify as vegan. Now, that could be someone who's like, yeah, I'm vegan. I eat fish once a week or something like that, that's the majority of people, by the way, guys, who say that they're vegan, is that they are just literally not vegan. They're reducitarians, whatever. I personally know people who say that they're vegan. Not in the vegan community on Facebook, by the way. I'm not calling anyone out. But I mean, I personally know people, like, in real life outside of Facebook and stuff, who aren't in the vegan community, who call themselves vegan and just literally aren't vegan. Like, I know a girl I went to uni with who, last time I met her, I asked if she's vegan now, and she said yeah. And then she said she just eats chicken, like, occasionally and stuff. Now, this is what's going on. So when we have people able to identify like that, and that's getting put down in the studies, of course, 84% of people, you know, don't are gonna return to eating animal products and blah blah blah, and obviously those the dropout rate is so high from the people who do go vegan because most people just don't have the willpower to do it, and I don't believe that those people are vegan at all. I mean, in your case though, this is going into the whole question: is there such thing as an ex-vegan? Before you were an ex-vegan, when you were vegan, were you vegan? That is the question. What do you think?
Yeah.
This is subjective. I'll just leave this for you to answer.
that's I mean that's the interesting conversation as well, because I'm kind of confused about like when people say that like you can't be an ex-vegan because you were never a vegan. I understand what they mean, and I think that it's true most of the time, but I didn't understand fully veganism in terms of like not exploiting animals and not using them, not
Commodifying.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Commodifying them. I didn't understand it fully like that. For me, it was all about suffering. But I also, in the back of my head, I didn't like it when people were saying, you know, like, oh, humanely, whatever. And then I did it, I know. But in the beginning, at least, I had an issue with that. So depends how you define it. Because if you define vegan as being against animal exploitation, I guess I wasn't. But if you meaning in terms of vegan lifestyle, like making sure that you're not buying like leather, all this stuff, like, and not having honey, things like this, at home, outside, anything, like trying as hard as possible. Yeah, I was doing that for like 2-3 years. I don't really remember exactly, but
Now, here's an important question I have that I think could decipher why people are going ex-vegan and stuff like that, including people we know personally in the activist movement, and it shocks us when it happens, is were you kidding yourself when you became an ex-vegan, or were your concerns valid? What I mean by that is, were your reasons for becoming an ex-vegan, were these like your genuine beliefs, or were you kind of convincing yourself stuff? Were you basically lying to yourself? And is this what's happening with ex-vegans? We're just trying to gather here, because when you speak to ex-vegans, as I say, their minds are always really made up and they're very, very sure. And it's like, no, this is the way it is and blah, blah, blah. And you almost try to say to them, like, you're lying to yourself just to, like, as a coping mechanism perhaps, or whatever. What are your experiences of that? Like, were you actually lying to yourself, or were you being genuine in your reasons for going ex-vegan?
For me, it was total bullshit.
Right.
For me, it was completely lying and just putting blinders on, like complete. Absolutely. Yeah. Like just like maybe I was choosing to believe like that they were right, that I was crazy because it was easier to have confidence. That's probably a factor as well, but definitely all bullshit for me. I mean, the thing is, like, I feel like it's different because if they were, I mean, did they ever, like, I mean, I don't know, did they ever get that it was about exploitation, or was it only about suffering, or, like, are this, yeah, like you said, like, are they saying they're vegan, but really they're plant-based? Mm-hmm. I don't know, like, that's also the muddy waters of this, but for me, it was total bullshit, yeah.
Yeah. And what about percentage-wise? Do you think... Let's just take... Now, obviously, we've said most people who identify as vegan aren't even vegan anyway. But I'm talking about the actual ethical vegans you see within the animal rights movements. They go on the demos and everything like that. Those ones who become ex-vegans, what percentage of those do you think their reasons are valid, like they genuinely believe these reasons for returning to eating animals, murdering animals, and what percentage of them do you believe are just like you, who were just complete bullshitting yourself, were doing that?
I think I have no idea. I don't know at all. Like, I don't know anything really about the ex-vegan population or anything like that.
Yeah.
But I wanted to say something. I think that, but I want to underline something, because I think a huge part of why we're seeing so many as well, when they are actual vegans, like meaning like they were a vegan whatever, they were vegan for suffering, you know?
Yeah.
They didn't get the commodification part of it. They didn't
Right.
get fully the use of animals and the exploitation. And I think that's huge, because if you get that, you're good to go, you know? If you're only doing it for the suffering, there's like still a spectrum. It's like utilitarian or something, like, you know, so I think that's a huge part of it. So it's also why now I'm so careful with like saying in my reach, like, you know, it's about exploitation and use, you know, like.
Right. So I'm just going to explain the difference between utilitarianism and deontology real quick for anyone in the chat who's unsure. I'm not a philosophy buff, by the way. I just know kind of the difference, the basic difference between these two things. So I'm sure someone could give a better explanation than myself. But deontology is more based on like rights and rules and principles. So it's wrong to, you know, it's wrong to sexually assault someone in their sleep, because even if nothing happens, yeah, you know, and there's no suffering involved, that's just a rights violation, and it's evil and wrong to do that. That's a violation of someone's rights, regardless of whether there's any suffering or not. So that would be an example of deontology. Utilitarianism is just about maximizing well-being. So-and-so was wrong because this leads to more negative outcomes than would otherwise. And a utilitarian could still potentially hold the position about, you know, sexually assaulting someone in their sleep is bad, even if no suffering was involved, because they might just think something like, because this sets a bad detriment to society or something like that. But then if we removed that, there would be technically nothing wrong with it. So that's where utilitarianism can essentially lead, right? It's the whole idea of as long as there's not like a strict extreme utilitarian, like a hardline utilitarian, actually doesn't believe rights violations are important at all. They don't really believe that rights as a concept should be something that we talk about. It's just purely about well-being, maximizing good, decreasing suffering, stuff like that. So do you think there is a problem here with people who might be... Do you see a pathway between utilitarianism and becoming ex-vegan?
Definitely. Yeah.
I mean, why is that?
Especially like that happened to me. Like it was like one of the big reasons why. Like I think if I had really gotten that, and also like not kid myself, because I think I got it to some degree. Like I felt it intuitively in terms of like I don't like it when they say that in the beginning, like that they say that it's okay to use them if, you know, you treat them or something. But then I lied to myself of saying just like, no, you're being unreasonable, you know. I was weak-minded and I believed what was coming to me instead of trusting that they didn't make sense to use them at all. So yeah, what was the question again?
Just about, do you think utilitarianism is a potential
Yes.
pathway to becoming an ex-vegan, especially
Absolutely.
the hardline? Yeah,
Definitely, absolutely.
that's interesting. Flores is in the chat here. He says Peter Singer is the person responsible for creating this huge focus on suffering in animal advocacy. He hardcore sucks and he consumes animal products. Yeah, so Singer, I think, identifies as a vegan, but, you know, he's not. He has this, you know, the Paris exemption rule where he says... it's funny, it's named after a city in France as well as Lucie. But, you know...
what's his name? Cosmic Skeptic, you know.
Right. And so,
about,
and to explain the Paris exemption, it's, you know, you can spend like 99.999% of your life not eating animal products and stuff and being a great vegan and stuff. But should you find yourself, you know, one night at a fancy restaurant in Paris and, you know, it's a once in a lifetime opportunity, there's no real harm done in ordering the steak because, you know, you're not increasing the demand by like some kind of significant amount with all the you know, it doesn't weigh up against the net cost benefit of what you've done in your life or something. So that is Singer's rule on that. And Singer
Imagine
also
replacing that with rape.
Right, exactly. Right. And he did say something pretty crazy recently. Now, I say something pretty crazy. Like I'm not a great philosophical debater, okay? So I'm sure if I was to debate Peter Singer on this, maybe he could, like... I'm sure he could find his way to, like, you know, make me not sure of, like, how to argue my position well. But what he did say is something that I would still see as pretty crazy. He said something recently, I think it was in a conversation with our dear ex-vegan friend Cosmic Skeptic, actually. Something about if 14-year-old humans were bred for meat and there was literally no suffering involved and their life was just the net positive coming into existence, and then one day they have no idea about this, we just shoot them in the back of their head, hang them upside down and slit their throats. He said no, there would be nothing wrong with that in his worldview. So Peter Singer would support farming children so long as literally zero suffering was involved and it was like a net positive them coming into existence. So that is kind of like what a hardcore utilitarian non-deontologist would believe, just to give people an example. But we'll move on from the super hard philosophical stuff now, because we don't want to get too distracted with that kind of stuff. One thing I wanted to ask you is, and I guess this wasn't the case with you because you've returned to the fold and thank God you've seen the light now, but why is it that ex-vegans are always just beyond reproach? You just cannot reach out to them. Now, some people say, because what happens is, they release their "I'm no longer vegan" post on social media, and boom, the comments flood in. And, there's lots of hostile stuff from us as animal rights activists. Will say, what the fuck are you thinking? Like, how can you do this? And blah, blah, blah. And obviously they don't like those comments, and people say, well, the reason they're acting like this is because, it's just a defensive reaction to all the backlash they're getting. But that's not true, because they react in a hostile manner as well, ex-vegans do, to people just kindly, gently offering out to reach help. Oh, hey, Steve, I'm sorry to hear about, the health issues you had or whatever. Look, I can get you in touch with a vegan dietitian who can help you troubleshoot these issues. And if you want to come over one night and we'll go for a coffee or something, it's on me, and we can talk to you about, what's going on here, because it's a real shame. No, how dare you question me? No, my mind is made up. I'm not ever being vegan again. I'm not joining your cult again, and blah, blah, blah. So they act aggressively, even to people who are just gently offering to help them return to the fold. Why is that? Why are ex-vegans just beyond reproach? Why do they shut down all questioning of, and all help of them returning to the fold?
Yeah, I think it's interesting because like I already said, I think I would have probably, because I wasn't against it when I was ex-vegan. It's like, that's the thing. I was just not acting according to my values and what I knew was right, I wasn't against it, But I feel like also, I can only guess, but for example, I knew this girl who was a friend, and she actually had a very similar journey to me,
Right.
to veganism, and she, like, same age, same thing happened, but she actually chose to stay an ex-vegan. And I actually started doing outreach conversation with her, and I wasn't very good with her part, so it didn't help. But she broke up with me after that as a friend, because there was so much, like, she was using like these health things, and because we had such a very similar journey, I think it was much more triggering as well.
Yeah.
But I really believe that it's like, it sounds like they've made up their mind. They don't care about whether it's the right choice or not in terms of objectively. Like, they've committed to that, like they've committed to being ex-vegan. And so it's like, like when you just want to shut your ears to someone making arguments because you don't want to be convinced, so you're like, la 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 la, you just don't want to engage because you're not interested in going there. I think that's what it is. I think it's just not really caring too much about, that's what I'm thinking, not caring too much about reality and what's actually, right for the victims or not, and what's actually true in terms of health, maybe. But I don't know, it's a guess.
Those people who are doing that, who are just going la 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 because they don't even want to be proven wrong and return to going vegan again, would that make them evil? Would that make them a cruel and evil person? In my opinion, there's an argument that it probably does, because it's like they've seen all the stuff, they've gone back to the fold, And it's not that they actually are convinced. They're like bullshitting themselves. And it's like, I don't want to be on the good side again. It's like, I know this is the good side, and I don't want to be on the good side. I want to be on the evil side, whether I'm right or wrong. Does that make them evil, or does that actually make them a good person doing a bad thing because they realise that it's evil? But I don't know. Tell me your thoughts on that.
Okay, you have to define evil for me, because sometimes I'm a little confused with what people mean.
Evil meaning just the opposite of stuff that is benevolent, kind, compassionate, altruistic. So selfish, cruel, apathetic, violent.
Well,
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, apathy to me is definitely like it is. I mean, if you use evil, like, because you can define evil as like, I want them to suffer, like sadistic or something, which it's not we're talking about here. But like, yeah. I mean, I absolutely believe that apathy is the fuel for like what you would call evil. You know, it's just it's what makes horrible stuff happen. I mean, so yeah.
Cool,
Apathy
good
is
answer.
definitely that.
I like that. Got another donation here from Tailgate Activism. Thank you for donating to my activism. He says, Lucie, do you make exceptions for your anti-vegan friends to consume animals just because you cannot force them to be civilized and act decent? Not sure what he means by the comment. Do you know?
I don't have anti-vegan friends or non-vegan friends. So.
Cool. There we go. All right. So I guess we're going to come to a fun little bit of the stream now. Well, actually, no, it's not fun. It's actually get ready to pour the Tabasco into your eyes, anyone who's watching. Because a few of us are aware of this girl who recently publicly renounced her veganism on Instagram. A girl we did activism with, actually, in the London scene. She's called Mira Lubin. And we're going to analyse her ex-vegan statement that she came out with yesterday while pouring Tabasco sauce into our eyes, because we're extremely disappointed with Mira, to say the least. And when we say disappointed, it's like we feel she's completely conned us. So, and it just shows that you don't really know the person until you know them, if that makes sense. So just to give a bit of backstory, Mira was once the youngest Anonymous for the Voiceless organiser in the world. She became organiser of one of the dozens of London chapters when she was just 15, I think. So an inspirational young activist. Seemed to be completely in it for the long haul. She wasn't the type of person who was seeking the limelight or anything like that. She was quite a shy and introverted type. She just seemed a genuine, kind-hearted, good person in it for the right reasons. And recently, people connected with her on social media had been noticing that she had started posting animal products on her story, and people were messaging her, including me, just like her, Mira, what's going on? Why have you just uploaded like a story of some cheese blints or something like that from the little convenience store? Like, what's going on? And then she uploaded a pic of her boyfriend like barbecuing some dead flesh yesterday, and it's like, okay, yeah, this is fully screwed up now. We are now very sure she's not vegan. A few people cottoned on to that, and then she just released this absolutely absurd statement explaining her reasons why she's no longer vegan. So we're going to pick these apart now. So I'm just going to share my screen. Share screen. Right, let's have a look at this. Right, can you see that, Lucie?
Yep.
Yeah. So here we are. This is Mira Lubin on Instagram, the former AV organizer, and this is her ex-vegan statement. Let's go through this, me and you, Lucie, and see what is going on here and just analyze her stuff. So Mira says, during this past year, I started to really struggle with being vegan. Doing it on my own became quite tough. What? What does she mean on her own? So that's already one red flag, because she wasn't on her own. She was surrounded by a massive activism community we've got in the UK. Again, when she used to do demos with us in London, it was a great social scene. There was like hundreds of us, and we would go we're all very supportive of each other. So that's just we're already starting this off with a huge red flag. What does she mean doing it on my own? Okay. My then boyfriend and now fiance, non-vegan by the way, really supported me as much as he could to help me stay on track and kept on reminding me why I'm doing what I'm doing. So
It's so strange.
So we have an ex-vegan here who was almost being convinced. This just makes it double absurd. Her carnist boyfriend was convincing her to stay vegan almost. But she has ended up going against even that. I mean, let me try and work that one out. I mean, it just gets stranger. All right, next slide of the story. I reached a point in May, I believe, where I kind of gave up at that point. I kept battling it in my head. The tipping point was when I tried to overlook the whole situation in general. Becoming vegan so young, so not experiencing things that anyone else had. Dealing with an ED, which was harder to handle because it was quite restrictive. Becoming more religious and wanting to get married and build a stable home and with healthy kids. Now, before we continue, this is where it gets a bit strange. You hear the ED thing here and you think, okay, eating disorder. Yeah, she's about to make a shit excuse, but it's going to be more understandable than some of the other ex-vegans, right? She's not about to say, the NWO is forcing the soy on us to weaken us. She's going to say something like, I had an eating disorder and it's very tough, so I had to do this for my health. Well, if you're about to think that Mira has... that's Mira's reasoning, you're going to be very surprised, because now she never mentions the ED again from this point, and it just gets messed up. I decided to try one evening of eating whatever I wanted. Do you mean whoever, Mira? I wanted to see how I felt after. After seeing both sides so freshly, I could properly decide what I want to do. Now she continues. It was interesting. It was an interesting evening, to say the least, indeed. My boyfriend wasn't sure if he should cheer me on or not, because he wanted the decision to come from me completely. I completely agreed, so I made all the decisions on my own. Can't lie, it was a good night. I completely let loose. I mean, what are your thoughts on this so far, Lucie? By the way, it gets even worse, just for anyone who's not quite poured the Tabasco in their eyeballs just yet. Open the bottle of Tabasco now. But what are your thoughts so far, Lucie, on what you've read?
Well, first off, it made sense to me that she's an ex-vegan because she was with a non-vegan. I mean, I'm always very, okay, it's a little controversial maybe, but I have a hard time having connections with non-vegans because it hurts so much. I'd rather be alone. And also because when you're an activist, you're dedicating so much of your time to this. You see all the horrors and you see how easy, I feel that it's very hard to just hang out with non-vegans. So the fact that she was a vegan activist, right? She was a vegan activist?
Yeah, a passionate and solid one, yeah. Was at all the demos in London. As I say, youngest AV organiser in the world at 15. But the fact that she was that and she chose to be with someone who's a non-vegan is strange to me. Because you have to be compatible in terms of values with someone, right? Yeah.
And that is, if you're a vegan activist, that is so huge.
Yeah. Well, you say you have to be compatible with their values, but we're going to find out in a second that Mira literally has no values. So this is... Now, this... I don't think... Right, get ready with the Tabasco. It came naturally after. I felt amazing. I started eating a lot of meat, so easy protein. So already one of the stupid myths we get as vegans, protein. Just like one of the basic dumb carnist arguments we laugh at every day. So I was never hungry. Yeah. It felt so much more natural than most processed vegan meat. Right. Now, here's the Tabasco moment. I got myself the Uggs I've always wanted. So this is now that the ED stuff was just a facade early on in this story. This is nothing to do with an eating disorder. She's now just fully abusing animals for fun. I got myself the Uggs I've always wanted. The perfumes I never had. The barbecues I missed out on with friends. I was actually able to go shopping without the constant pressure of checking things. Pressure! It's like she's walking into the supermarket and there's this timer. Like that game show, Supermarket Sweep. She's got to run around and put stuff in her trolley, like in a time limit. What pressure is she talking about? But already we can say, what are your thoughts just so far reading that paragraph, Lucy? I mean, this to me, as someone who knows her personally, and to all of us who know her, this was just upsetting, actually.
It
to
feels
hear
like
her say that.
she lost complete sight of the victims.
Yeah, absolutely. Or never had sight of the victims in the first place. I
But
mean,
how, though? How would she not if she was an actress? Like, I don't understand.
Yeah, we just don't understand. We're not sure what's going on here. The barbecues I missed out on with friends. Again, if you're an animal rights activist, you don't miss out on barbecues with friends. You don't want to be around searing flesh, right? Or you can bring your own vegan stuff to the barbecue, or you can have vegan barbecues with the hundreds, potentially thousands of vegans that you know, Mira. So what is going on here? What is she missing out? There's vegans having barbecues in London all the time. I see them on social media all the time. We've just had summer here in the UK. I've seen vegan barbecue photos every week. So what is she talking about here? Right, carrying on. I literally felt like a massive weight was lifted off my shoulders. What? Again, this is just absurd to me. The weight should be on her shoulders now. Why does she... This just shows that she has no morals. If this was me writing this, the weight of the world would be on my shoulders. I'm an animal abuser. I can't sleep well at night. I'm barbecuing murdered flesh, for goodness sake. Now here comes... Now get that second bottle of Tabasco open, guys, and pour this one straight into your eyeballs. Even convinced a vegan friend of mine to start eating meat again, and he's thanked me ever since. I got so much support from all my friends. So, number one, whoever this person is who's started eating meat again and is thanking her is a complete scumbag. So I hope this person gets exposed soon. But this is what's quite upsetting to us now, Lucy, right, is that we personally know Mira as an animal rights activist, a committed, dedicated animal rights activist. She's now an anti-vegan activist. She's going around convincing people to abuse and oppress animals. So she's gone from standing in the streets holding animal oppressors accountable with AV to holding vegans accountable for being compassionate. She's now wanting to return people to abusing animals. What's going on here? Can you shed any insight on this, Lucy?
I also was struck when she mentioned religion.
Yeah.
Because, is she meaning Christian, or is it a different, like, I don't know if that matters too much, but...
Mira's Jewish.
Jewish, okay.
Yeah.
Was she Jewish before, or...?
Yeah, she's raised in a Jewish family. I don't know if she's ever taken it that seriously, being like an Orthodox Jew, whatever. I guess she's taking it more... seriously now, I don't know, but then again, she's probably not. I mean, it just seems she has no... If she finds being vegan hard, how is she going to find abiding by the principles of the Torah, where there's very strict rules on a load of stuff in ways to live your life? So this just gets crazy. Anyway, continuing. Yes, I think there are some amazing aspects of veganism. Okay, what are they, Mira? But there are also some major downsides. What were the She hasn't mentioned any downsides other than her just not being able to abuse, or not. I say not being able. She's always been able to abuse animals. The point is, if you're vegan, you don't want to abuse animals. What's the downside of this? I've never felt so happy and free like I do now. But yeah, while the animals are being caged and oppressed. But if social pressure is stopping you from doing something that's completely, here it goes, one of the three ends of carnism.
It's like contradicting itself.
Right. Social pressure? What? The social pressure is from society. So she says, but if social pressure is stopping you from doing something that's completely normal within society everywhere, that's a massive red flag. So yeah, she's got it the wrong way round. It's social pressure that is pressuring vegans to return to being animal abusers. What is she talking about? Social pressure causing her to be vegan?
Normal, right?
Right. Well, I mean, it's just the whole that sentence doesn't even make sense. It's like an oxymoron.
Yeah.
What is she talking about? The social pressure is the thing that's trying to get us something to do, the normal thing, the murdering animals thing. Then she goes, if being vegan is something that works for you, great. But it wasn't for me. Why? Again, she hasn't explained why. Gonna stop now because that's a closed chapter. But cheers to the future, clinking champagne glass emoji. The future, cheers to the future of the animal holocaust. Hey! A great way to end the story there, Mira. But she shares one more. Last one, I swear. Just thinking about it. And I think this really reveals her that, you know, what's going on here. Last one, I swear. Just thinking about when I was vegan, we got told all day long about how it's basically no different to not being vegan. And there's so many options, blah, blah, blah. So she's saying that vegans convinced her that, oh, it's just the same as being non-vegan. I mean, I reject that. I've never said it's just the same. There are things that we don't want to do. Again, it's not that we can't do them. It's that we don't want to do them. And then she says, no, honey. One option in every restaurant, absurd. You can't take part in so many social events or activities. There's literally a gap between you and the rest of the society. I mean, yeah, just horrible, right? I mean, imagine not participating in oppression with other people. It's just, it's horrible.
Trivial.
Yeah, and I just want to pick apart this bullshit here. One option in every restaurant. Mira, you live in the fucking UK. We have the chain restaurants here have entirely separate vegan menus. We're the most blessed country in the world for this. Las Iguanas has an entire vegan menu. Zizi has a vegan menu. Pizza Express has a vegan menu. I think Pizza Hut's got 3 or 4 vegan pizzas now, including with Beyond Meat on them. Like, you can get like Beyond Meat pizzas from Pizza Hut. Subway, we've got the like meatless meatball marinara. We've got the meatless patty. We've got like the chicken, the meatless chicken. We've got all the, you know, barbarito with the this isn't chicken bits. I mean, what is she talking about? One option in every restaurant. I mean, even Burger King in the UK has like the vegan Baconator and the vegan Chicken Royale. Burger King! What is Mira talking about here? One option in every restaurant. We have even then, I mean, who cares? Yeah, not that this would be an excuse anyway. But it's like we get to this point in her story now that we just know she's a fucking liar. What is she talking about? She's talking as if she lives in Iraq or something. What is she talking about? One option in every restaurant. I'm sorry I went on a bit of a rant there, guys, but when you're surrounded by, like, it's the problem with being vegan now, the thing that makes it tough being vegan now is too much choice. Like, me and my girlfriend, Rachel, the other night, we were deciding, like, where to order from, where to go. It's like, shit, what do we get? I fancy this. No, what about this? And what about this? It's like, the amount of choice we have now, it's got almost like too much. It's like you don't know what to order now when you go to a restaurant or when you're deciding where to get a takeaway from.
You're not used to it because of years ago.
Yeah. Oh my God. Could you imagine Mira being a vegan in like even the 90s or even like the early noughties? How on earth would she have coped? This is just hilarious, but also very depressing at the same time. And then she ends with, I know someone out there will say it's selfish or whatever. Yep. But I'd be curious to know why I'm the selfish one compared, who was vegan for 5 years, compared to someone who isn't and never will be vegan. So this weird cryptic, like, what is she saying here? She knows.
This proves she knows it's wrong.
Right. She knows it's wrong, but she's like, just write an entire story boasting about how great it is that she's doing it now and how free she is. And this is another observation I made. I was talking to a friend of hers, Connor, who I think is watching right now, who's just beyond devastated about this as well. He's, he can't believe that she's done this. And I mentioned in observation to her, this is just going back to her religion. There's a double hypocrisy here with the Judaism thing. Number one, as a Jew, Mira is from a historically oppressed group. the Jews are one of the most oppressed groups in history. From every dominant group there's been throughout history has had something against the Jews. Okay, they've been an extremely marginalized, hated on group who have faced horrific oppressions and injustices throughout history, supported by the masses. You know, we had like the pogroms and stuff in Europe and all that kind of stuff. This was even long before the Holocaust. You know, we had like mass murders of Jews taking place in Europe and wherever. So she knows that the whole majority thing is just a very bad excuse. She knows about the history of her own people being brutally oppressed and that societal norms are the most dangerous thing. Look at Alex Hershaft's work. He talks about the power of social norms. He says this is something, and here Mira is now, just abiding by social norms and just absolutely condoning them. And then the second hypocrisy here is, she says she's become more religious, so she's becoming more orthodox as a Jew. If you're an Orthodox Jew, there's a lot of stuff that you quote-unquote can't do, right? The Torah is quite strict. You know, there's going to be a lot of stuff. If she wants to take her religion seriously, you know, you can't show too much skin. You can't potentially drink alcohol and stuff. There's the forbidding of eating certain types of animals. There's stuff about sex and marriage. And I think super Orthodox Jewish women, they're not allowed to show, is it their hair to anyone unless their husband? Or it's something, there's some kind of rule. I'm not super familiar with Judaism, but I know that there's a lot of rules if you want to take your religion seriously, right? So that's another just weird thing. It's like, I would actually say it's easier to live by the principles of being vegan than it is to live by like the Torah, which is this massive document with loads and loads and loads of rules. Yet she's talking about it was hard to be a vegan. Woe is me, I couldn't buy Uggs. And there's only 7 vegan options in every restaurant in the UK. And, you know, and I can't go to barbecues with my non-vegan friends. It's just the thousands of vegans that I know hosting barbecues whose barbecues I can attend. I mean, it's just, can you just feel the suffering this poor girl went through, Lucie? I mean, it's, my heart goes out here to Mira for all the horrific oppression and injustice she's faced as a vegan. What are your thoughts on that, Lucie? I'll let you make a summarizing statement on Mira's story there.
I just think it's a very important lesson for us to kind of like learn that it's not because someone was not selfish at some point that they're not gonna be again.
Yeah.
I'm the living proof of that. So, you know, like, it is like, I mean, I feel like humans, like, in terms of like, the baseline of humans is selfishness if you don't think about the victims that you're not in connection with, like, all day-to-day life. You don't see this, like, day-to-day life if you don't choose to, you know?
Yeah.
You can choose to, like, kind of turn it off. And I think that's, yeah, you can actually be empathetic, whatever, or like understand the principle of like not being against animal exploitation, etc. But then you can't decide to be selfish. You can actually do that. And I know a lot of vegans don't understand that because they wouldn't do that because they're just good people. But it's a thing. It happens. So.
When you read Mira's story there, do you resonate as a former ex-vegan with any of it? Do you think, oh, this is what I was thinking, blah, blah, blah? Or do you just think, holy shit, even I think that was just a complete load of bullshit and I was an ex-vegan myself?
I felt this social pressure, but it's not like when I was an ex-vegan, I was thinking, oh, you know, thank God now I'm an ex-vegan because I knew always that veganism was the right thing, just I wasn't doing it, you know. But like I wasn't an anti-veganism thing or like, oh, veganism failed me or something. But like the social pressure, yeah. But again, like if you remember the victims, all of this is nothing. What hurts you is knowing what's going on. You know, it's not like that the restaurant has one option. Like you don't give a shit for that.
It's so trivial. I mean, I can't Honestly, I mean, I'm still just in utter disbelief that she's written all that, knowing her. Although it's clear now, we're saying we didn't know her, and having done activism, and it's embarrassing as well. This was another thing I was saying to Connor yesterday. How can you, as an AV organiser who deals with the abuse and the absolute mouth breathers who pass us on the streets every day when we do street outreach, the absolute dribbling morons who walk past and shout like stupid troll comments and just the ridiculous comments that we get on outreach from cruel, selfish, vile, apathetic people. I'm not talking about just the average non-vegan who hasn't made the connection but does find it upsetting what we're showing on the screens. I'm talking about the absolute scumbags that we do unfortunately bump into while doing street outreach for groups, like AV and We the Free and so on. How can she not be utterly embarrassed to be on their side again?
Since when has she stopped activism?
I don't know. I mean, I haven't seen her at an activism event since I was the AV organizer in London. I left that in 2018, maybe, but I'm sure she would have been at AV London events after that. Maybe she kind of dropped off the radar. Maybe whenever she got with this carnist guy. I don't know. But she's always been allegedly vegan up until this insane announcement she's just made that just shows how selfish and cruel that she is. But what was I going to ask? Yeah, this is what I was going to say. Oh, no, I'll let you answer this first, actually. Like, do you see what I'm saying about how it's just embarrassing to be on the same sides of those idiots again? Is that something that you feel like I do?
Yeah, I'm just confused. I just don't understand how you would not. I just think at this point it's just I don't care. Yeah, I just don't care whether it makes sense or if it's right or if it's absurd. I just want to do my own selfish thing, and I like it's like not caring about reality or the truth. Like I think that's what it is. It's like I don't care. I want to be with my fiance or whatever partner, and I want to be with like my family or whatever. Like I want to do the traditional thing or whatever she said. And I just don't care. I think that's just that. It's apathy, selfishness, self-centeredness. Just.
Do you know what is meant by the phrase? This is just deeper analysing some of the statements that she's made. Do you know what is meant by the phrase throwing rocks at the cathedral? Are you familiar with that metaphor? Okay. Basically, it means when someone feels that they were entrapped in some kind of like cult or some kind of dogmatic belief system, they then take it out on the thing that they feel like entrapped them, like as a form of rage. There's that powerful scene in Forrest Gump as well, where Jenny returns to the house she was abused at as a child. No one's living in the house; it's a derelict house, but she just starts smashing the windows up with stones. Do you think, looking at some of Mira's statements there about I can now do the things that I wanted and I feel like a huge weight is lifted off my shoulder, do you think that she perhaps feels angry at veganism for some reason, for perhaps taking away her childhood or something like that, and she's now misplacing that anger and taking it out on the animals? Do you think there's something going on here with her? She perhaps... I mean, I don't want to make her statement sound rational, because it's not. It's just the biggest load of bullshit that any of us here have ever read, let's face it. But do you think there is this throwing rocks at the cathedral thing going on there? Or is something else happening?
I think also, like, if you're so young, maybe, and you kind of went into it head first like that, and maybe she hadn't appropriated, like, it herself, like, fully, like, maybe she kind of let herself go, like, without actually really understanding it fully and really owning it, maybe? I mean, that makes no sense to me, because she was, like, she founded one and everything, but I think, like, I feel like a lot of people do that when they don't actually realize that they made the choices that they've made, and that this is on them, not anyone else. Like, that's a normal human thing that people do, I think, and that makes sense. That could definitely be that. I don't know.
Now, we'll come towards the end of the stream now, because I only have one or two questions left that I want to ask you. But just going off what Mira said there, and how it's shocked many of us in the animal rights community here in the UK knowing this. How do we know who to trust? And it's important to get your view on this as a former ex-vegan, because back when you were an ex-vegan, I would have shouted you down and called you every name under the sun, but then you actually came back to the fold, and now you are a great activist. And we love what you're doing very much, Lucie, and we thank you so much for coming on the stream. Just to say that this isn't a hostile environment. We really respect everything that you're doing and for coming on to this, right? But, the truth is, we would have been fucking furious at you for being an ex-vegan back in the day after watching all that stuff and then just going, nah. So, how do we know who to trust? Is there a chance that Mira could turn around and again like you did and see the light, or is that it? Is it like most ex-vegans, it's just that's it? And if so, if we were so sure that Mira would just never ever be an ex-vegan, how do we know who to trust? Is there some kind of thing that you've spotted amongst? I mean, shed some light on this if you can.
I don't think you can at all. I think it's a good thing though. I think it keeps us on our toes to kind of if someone is kind of it's just we have to keep educating ourselves, and that the main thing I think is just selfishness. Literally, that's simple. It's just not focusing on the victims, because if you focus on that, you'll figure everything out you need to figure out because you want to, because you have the motivation to. But if you don't have that in mind, then anything else falls apart. But I don't think you can actually predict that really to a T. But of course, it's that's the point. I think if someone was in it for the suffering or whatever, and maybe they figure out but it's about anti-exploitation, the not exploiting animals and not using them. It's not only about the suffering. Then maybe they'll come around like I did. I don't know, or maybe just I think it's a lot also about. I think a huge reason why people go ex-vegan is that they're not held accountable because of just society not being vegan. I think that's huge, and I know I really believe that. I'm not 100% sure, but I really really believe that. When I was a teen and I was vegetarian, if someone had held me accountable, yeah, whatever, I would have maybe felt bad at the beginning, but I would have gone right back, because I was kind of I wanted that to be I wanted to believe that that the vegan thing was right in some sense, but also I was fine things I guess I was split in that sense, but accountability is so important, and it's just they don't get that because everybody's not vegan. So
now 2 more questions for you, Lucie. Is there such thing as an ex-vegan? And this can be as brief or as long as you want. I might have even asked you earlier in the stream, actually, but let's just clarify this once and for all. Is there such thing as an ex-vegan?
If you take the definition of, I think there is. But that's the thing. I'm confused about that, because is it someone who understood that this was against animal use, or did they just think it was about suffering? Because I don't think you're actually vegan, meaning you align with the stance against animal exploitation, if you're just in it for the suffering and you don't get it. In terms you don't really fully understand it, so you're not truly that, even if you're living the lifestyle.
Yeah. I mean, in Mira's case, it's not like she was just one of those vegans who thinks it's just about the suffering, because she hasn't said anything like, I make sure to purchase my animal products now from, free-range farms and they don't suffer. She's just all out funding the most torturous abuses on the planet, and she fully knows it. And she's just saying, I don't care. I just feel free now. I have this weight off my shoulders. She's seen all the horrific videos, and she's not even darting around it or saying what some of these ex-vegans say, which is that, backyard eggs and, I have some wild-caught salmon from time to time or something like that. It's like she's just fully funding every single thing she showed on those TV screens there to the bystanders. So she did. It's like,
But you answered your own question.
Yeah. Well, in my opinion, I don't think there is such thing as an ex-vegan. My analogy for this is, if all it takes for you to return to stabbing and gassing animals to death is just some nonsensical bullshit, you can't have truly deeply held the values at first. So my analogy is this, right? It's like a pacifist. It's like someone saying, I used to be a pacifist for 5 years, but then someone looked at me the wrong way in the street, so I decapitated them. Now, would you believe that person was a pacifist? Mm-hmm. The answer obviously would just be no. That person just seems like a very violent person who was just using a label to define themselves for the 5 years they weren't cutting people's heads off.
Yeah, but I don't agree. I think there is such a thing. Because,
That's fine.
I think people can become selfish, can regress, can devolve. I believe that is totally possible. I've seen that happen for me as well, in terms of like, I mean, I was like more honest when I began it, and I was way more like whatever. I had more integrity, and then I just devolved and then went back to it. But like, I think because it's in my case, I was, yeah, there was the suffering thing, so I wasn't truly vegan. But for a person like her, like, I don't understand how you would not have called her, because she was anti-exploitation, right? Or maybe I don't know. It just feels like I don't know. I'm still confused. I'm not like 100% sure that there is an ex-vegan. I am open to be changing my mind on this, but it seems to me that it seems like, yeah, people can just become assholes. Like, it's possible.
I mean, in my opinion, I just don't think, that she felt really anything the whole time. It just seems she had us completely deceived, because if this is her attitude, now, I bought the Uggs I've always wanted and all this kind of vain bullshit, she's supporting the live export industry of these, if anyone's seen the wool industry footage of, like, how Uggs are made and stuff, it's just some of the most horrendous abuse that I've ever seen, just all for a vain, vacuous fashion statement. And I mean, how can she have ever truly felt it in her heart? It seems to me like she was just doing this. Someone made a comment about this yesterday on Facebook. They said this just exposes her, as it got to the later slides in her story, it seemed to be about what made her feel good. So that's the key here. She was vegan because it made her feel good. Yeah. So it's about...
That is the catch, I think.
Yes.
That's probably it.
It's like, it's about hedonism for some people. And you get narcissists who I think go vegan, or they have that superhero complex. They want to go vegan because it makes them feel like some kind of hero, but they don't genuinely have the victims in mind.
But that's the point. Even if they do, they go vegan because they hate the suffering, because it makes them feel bad. Not fully being in the victim's point of view, Not like about like, ooh, I don't want to be used as exploited if I'm the victim, but it makes me feel so bad to see the suffering. But if you, like, it's probably what happened. Like if you disconnect yourself because you're sick of being miserable or something, and you feel like futility or something, you don't feel like you can do something about it or whatever, and you decide to switch it off or whatever, I don't remember what I was going to say.
Well, and you know what?
I think anyways.
It's fine, because, I mean, this is just one of those things that we could have like an hour-long discussion on. Is there such thing as an ex-vegan, blah, blah, blah. But you know what? It kind of almost, I was going to say it doesn't matter. It does matter, but at the same time, the main thing that matters is actually we have to find out what is going on here, which is why I value you coming on so much, because I think you've shared some important insights today, and I just want to I hope everyone watching has enjoyed this as well, and to share this if you enjoyed watching this live stream, because I think we've discussed some very important stuff today. But just to end the live stream, Lucie, what I want you to do is I want you to give a message to any ex-vegans out there who are watching right now. So coming from the former ex-vegan herself, Lucie Munson, Tell any ex-vegans, Lucie, watching, give them any kind of message that you want. What would you say to any ex-vegans who are watching this stream right now?
No pressure. um. Okay. I know what I want to say, but I don't know how to say it well.
Speak from the heart, not
okay,
from the
well,
head.
it's
Speak
not
from
about
the heart.
you, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah.
Stop making it about you. Just remember the victims, because it's never been about you. It's not about you, so stop making it about you. It's really simple. I think it's the main reason why we have ex-vegans, just selfishness.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Yeah, and if you remember that, it will be easy. You'll figure it out.
Absolutely. Yeah, there's that saying. The difference between those who find veganism easy and those who find veganism hard is those that find it easier thinking about the victims, while those who find it harder thinking about themselves. So yeah. All right, Lucie, I guess we'll end it there. Thank you so much for coming on today. You've been a brilliant guest, and I can't wait to get sharing this around. And yeah, thank you everyone in the chat for watching, and we hope you enjoy all the rest of your days or nights.
Thank you so much. Bye.